We're in chapter 4 of the Shar Bitachon of the Gate of Trust. And where we are in the book is we are in the section of the book where he's explaining to us how to apply bitachon in different areas of our life. The different areas are going to be the following. They're going to be me, myself, and I, my existence, my being here. Then there's going to be my money and my stuff, which is the section we're in right now. Then there's going to be my family, friends, and enemy. So, my circle of influence. Then there's going to be mitzvot that I do by myself. Then there's going to be mitzvot that I do with others. And then there's going to be how does bitachon apply regarding my getting a reward in the world to come? And then how does bitachon apply regarding what we're going to learn is sort of like extra brownie points in the world to come. Okay. So something that is, given to very extra special individuals. So how do we get here? And that's what I want to walk the newcomers to the class. I want to walk you through that. We're in this at this point because he's already given us a lot of information. He's given us in the introduction the 10 benefits of bitachon, and he's proven to us that there are 10 spiritual benefits, 10 material benefits. He's given us the definition of bitachon in chapter 1, which is the peace of mind and tranquility that comes from knowing that in whom we trust is going to fulfill our needs, and it's going to even go above and beyond what we need. Okay, so we understand from the author that this is an emotional state of tranquility that comes from the knowing that this entity is fully reliable. He's going to deliver and he's going to go above and beyond. Then in chapter 2, chapter 2, he starts telling me, well, what would be the qualities that an entity in whom you're going to put your reliance, what would they have to have? Like if you're going to you're going to surrender your, everything to them, what qualities would they have to have? This would be important for you to know. And we start off by saying, you know what? They would have to be loving and merciful and empathetic towards me, right? They have to come from a place of love. That has to be kind of like prerequisite number one. Like if they don't love me, like I'm not putting my trust in this individual or this entity, right? And this thing, this other, right? But is that enough to make them fully reliable? Well, obviously not. They also would have to be fully attentive, meaning to say 24/7. They can never fall asleep. They can never miss a phone call. They can never just space out. They weren't too busy. They have to be literally 24/7. So they have to be loving, caring, and merciful. They have to be attentive. They also have to be invincible. They have to be so strong to the point of invincibility, because if they're not, if a hurricane can stop them, a tornado, a financial crash, a flood, I don't know what, right? Then I can't fully rely on them, right? They have to be so strong to the point of invincibility. So they have to love me. They have to be completely attentive to my needs. They have to be strong. Is it enough? No, they have to be all-knowing. They have to know everything about me, what is obvious and what is not so obvious, maybe even to myself, what I don't even know and others don't know. They have to deeply know me, right? And know what is good for me. They have to know the full picture of my life. They have to be all-knowing, not just of me, but of everything around me. Is that enough? Well, it's pretty good, but actually, what if this person doesn't have full jurisdiction over me, meaning to say they don't have the sole responsibility of my life? What if this person, somebody else aside from them, can do things for me? What if they can deliver? What if they can give me stuff or delay giving me stuff? Then this entity in whom I'm putting my trust is not completely reliable, because if somebody else can affect my life in any way whatsoever, then they're not reliable. So it has to be that this entity or this person in whom I'm putting my exclusive trust in has to be the only one that has control, say, sovereignty, jurisdiction over anything that has to be with my life. That's all very good. So they have to be loving, they have to be attentive, they have to be strong, they have to be all-knowing, they have to be solely responsible for me, but they also have to have such a closeness to my life, such a track record with me, that meaning to say that they've been with me through everything from beginning to end, from the moment not even that my soul came into my body, but that my soul was created and that my soul came into my body, and from the moment of birth until the moment I leave this place, right? They have to have been with me forever. If they haven't been with me forever, if they haven't had that close relationship and intimate relationship with me forever, then I don't know, could I really, really trust them? And then lastly, they would have to be extremely generous to the deserving and the undeserving. Because if they could hold back, if they could be like, I don't feel like it today, like, no, then could I trust them? No, there have to be like an entity that's able to be in a constant state of giving and generously just flowing, whether I made a mistake today or I didn't, whether I deserve it or not. So when he explains to us all those qualities, we go, oh, wow, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, actually, yeah, that would make sense. That would be a prerequisite. Like, yeah, they would actually have to know me. They would actually have to be invincible. All these things are like, then who in your life, who in the world would have all those qualities warranting my reliance? And by human logic, any intelligent human would conclude, oh, nobody does, right? The only one who has such qualities is God Almighty. Therefore, the logic is God Almighty is the only reliable entity out there. Nobody else warrants my reliance. They don't deserve my reliance, my trust. And again, the word trust is a little bit weak, right? We're talking about bitachon, we're talking about betach, security, guarantee, right? A complete closeness, like the word tach is embedded in the root of the word bitachon. Tach means a plaster, it's a plastering, it's a cementing of a relationship between the one who trusts and the one who's being trusted, right? So after he gives us all those very important 7 trustworthy qualities, he goes ahead to chapter 3, and he repeats those 7 qualities again. That's how important they are. And what he repeats them in the following context, because in chapter 5, he's going to do something. Now that you know what are the qualities that make somebody reliable and who is the one who has them, then let me tell you, what do you have to have in place for your bitachon to be actual bitachon? Because up until now, I already explained to you the benefits of bitachon. You bought into that. I explained to you what bitachon is. You bought into that. I explained to you what qualities the entity on whom we are going to have reliance is going to need for you to actually rely on them. You bought into that. Now let me tell you what you have to have in place so that you're not just saying you have bitachon, but really you don't maybe have it. So he's going to give us 5 things that need to be in place for bitachon to be real bitachon. And the first thing is the person who is going to become about bitachon has to know these 7 qualities. They have to know them. So he repeats them to us, and then he wraps them up in a concept called, in this class, we call it causality, meaning to say a concept that says God is the cause of all causes. How does he come to this beautiful packaging of the 7 trustworthy qualities? Because once I understand those 7 qualities, it's very obvious to see nobody else can cause anything in the world. He is the all-knowing. He is the invisible. He is the loving. He is the one with the sole jurisdiction. He is the attentive one. He is the generous one. Therefore, he is the only one that causes anything to happen. Nobody can give me more, give me less, make things speed up or move faster or delay things. Nobody in the world can cause anything except God, right? And he's the cause of all causes. So that is factor number 1 that needs to be in place, that the person who is going to be a master of bitachon has to live with this very fundamental understanding that God is the only cause in my life and in every life. He is the cause of all causes of everything. Everything else that I see in the world that seems to be a cause are mere agents that God is using to achieve what he wants to achieve, but they don't have causality. They don't cause anything on their own. They are just the moving pieces that God is moving for us. Okay. They seem to have independence, but they have no independence. Then that's factor number one that needs to be in place. Then comes factor number two that has to be in place. And that is, well, there has to be sincerity. It cannot just be lip service. Welcome, Connie. It cannot just be lip service. It actually has to be, this entity is all knowing, right? God knows exactly how you're feeling. So your bitachon, that emotional state, has to be pure. It cannot be, as we say in Spanish, de la boca para fuera. It's not lip service. It has to be sincere. So causality, sincerity. Number three, exclusivity. It has to be exclusive. I can't say, and this is like this is a pitfall for most of us, right? I can't say, well, I trust God, but really I'm putting all my trust in my client, in my company, in my bank, and how do we know, by the way, that we're doing that? The minute we get nervous when all these things are failing, right? Like anytime we're nervous, it's because we're out of whack, we're out of alignment. We have actually we're putting our trust on those things that are not reliable, right? And by the way, you should know, as we always say in this class, a big reason why we suffer from such a crisis of anxiety and desperation, right? And stress and all that is because subconsciously, everybody actually knows that all the things that they're putting their reliance on are not reliable. Whether we admit it or recognize it or are conscious about it, subconsciously, everybody knows that all these things are fickle. They can be taken from us any second. They're nothing. And they really are. And then there's people who have this great recognition with which comes great power, and it's the power of bitachon, right? So it has to be exclusive, meaning to say, you have to be involved in the world 100%. And that's going to be reason number 5. So maybe I'm jumping a little bit ahead, but you're not putting your reliance on the world, because this world is just a world of nature. It's just a puppet show. It's not reliable. And he already told us in chapter 2, and you concluded by learning it, that of course, with those 7 qualities, only God is reliable. Okay. So now factor number 4 that needs to be in place is, why am I blanking out? Hold on one second. I'm again reviewing chapter 3. For all the new people in the class, welcome. Welcome, Hannah. See, now yeah. Okay, so the next factor is there has to be obedience, meaning to say, if God has created a blueprint for your life, if you are to actually be relying on him, then by definition, you would follow what he's telling us is good for us, right? So if you go to a doctor and he tells you, ma'am, based on your medical profile, you really need to, exercise cardiovascular 30 minutes a day. You need to eliminate all sugars. You need to take this amount of vitamins. You need to, I don't know what, right? Reduce sodium, blah, 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 blah. I'll see you in 30 days. And I expect to see, this changes and, blah, 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 blah. And you come back and I didn't go. Said, doctor, I didn't do anything. So obviously you didn't believe, you don't trust him. You don't believe, you don't trust, you don't rely that he has the right prescription. Because if you did, you would follow doctor's orders. We're going to talk about that in a second too, right? So that's just an example. If you're saying you're relying in this entity, whatever this entity is telling you is good for you, then you're going, yeah, okay, fine. And obviously, as I said yesterday in the Spanish class, there's a spectrum that we're here, Baruch Hashem, till 120 years, all growing. That's not to say that, now today we're all holding at a place where we're following all 613 commandments and we're doing everything to perfection. We're human beings. It's expected. It's part of the relationship, right? We're flawed. We're constantly growing. But meaning to say, we understand that we are in this relationship with this reliable entity. Therefore, we're striving constantly to become closer, to be in this place of obedience and this place of following directives, right, as much as we can. And we're in that direction, whether we're going at lightning speed or a slow speed. That's all good, but we have to be going in that direction. Okay, so that's number 4. Then number 5 is effort, meaning to say, and this this is going to be very familiar to all of you, that yes, it's all very good, but the same God who said, rely on me, said, you have to be in my world. So just like the Jews in the desert had to pick up the man, right? They had to do something, and whoever had more bitachon had to do very little, and whoever had less bitachon had to do a little bit more. Today, you still have to pick up the cup and drink the water. You have to put it in your mouth, right? There has to be a certain amount of effort, and it's expected that you do so. It's part of serving Hashem. So ishtadlus is a thing that we do. And by the way, you should know there is an inverse relationship between effort and bitachon. The more bitachon you have, the less ishtadlus you have to do. The less bitachon you have, the more ishtadlus you have to do. But the fifth prerequisite is, the fifth factor for bitachon to be bitachon is that you cannot sit in Miami, as much as we loved being there together. We cannot just sit there drinking pina coladas the whole day. We actually have to come back and be involved in the world and be productive and do the things and show up to our doctor's appointments and do the checkups that we have to do, right? And follow the protocol of nature, whatever it is that needs to be done, without giving that nature any credit, any credence, any strength, because we recognize, again, factor number one, causality. God is the cause of all causes. Okay, so those are the five factors. Now we're in chapter 4, as I told you at the beginning, and now we can get started with the class. So chapter 4, now he's going to tell us, okay, beautiful. Now I'm going to teach you how to apply bitachon in different areas of your life. And the first one I told you before is me, myself, and I. That is me, my existence, my health, my character traits. How long am I in this world? When did I come to this world? When I leave it? What is my level of health? What is my health profile, my character profile, all these things. And the bottom line, as it regards to bitachon, is the person with bitachon has to rely that whatever the packaging Hashem gave you is exactly from Hashem, is exactly from God, and it's exactly what the person needs to do to thrive and work, do the service in this world. Of course, there are things that every person, every individual has to work through and improve, but that's part of the plan. That's part of the design, right? So whatever qualities you were given, whether they're emotional, intellectual, or physical qualities, whatever strengths or weaknesses are in those areas, you have to work through that and improve whatever needs to be improved, okay? But meaning to say, they are predetermined, okay? And so when he talks about that, he actually preempts a very serious question, which is, well, if it's predetermined, the way I'm going to come into this world and the way I'm going to leave this world and when I'm going to leave this world, then why don't I just do whatever the heck I want, right? I'm just going to do whatever I like, and I'm just going to go jump off an airplane, and I'm just going to go, I don't know, drink some potions and go do, I don't know what I'm going to do, right? Crazy, reckless stuff. And he says, no, that's not bitachon, okay? Bitachon is not permission to be reckless. Bitachon, recognizing that God is the one who determined your existence and determines how long you're here and with what health profile you're here. And that doesn't mean that now you go and be reckless and negligent, okay? So that's number one. Then number two is going to be the section we're in right now, which is my money and my stuff. So in terms of my money and my stuff, we are in page 142. Up until now, he has told us about the different mistakes that a person who has financial resources can make. Among them, they can become hoarders. They can become they can be hoarders, meaning they don't lose the grip of money. They could also become arrogant, people who shame others and think that other people, kind of owe them things and veneration and favor because they are in a position to help them with money, etc. Or they can become, so to speak, gangsters, meaning to say they're the type of person who can start cutting corners to make more money, can do things that are illegal, etc., etc. So those are kind of like the pitfalls that might come when a person is blessed with financial success, and that's the warning, and that's the test of wealth, right? And now he's going to tell us about the mistake that a person can make in thinking that the means through which money reaches him are the true cause of financial success, which is another common pitfall, right? A common pitfall is the minute we start seeing the money flow into our life, we forget where it's coming from and we start thinking, like it comes from the strength of my hand, right? And we forget that it came from the source, capital S. So again, it's a source, it's a form of arrogance where we become blinded to the actual reality, which is it wasn't your degree, it wasn't your connections, it wasn't your brain, your ingenuity, your smarts, et cetera, et cetera. So again, we go back to the same concept that we said in the 5 factors that need to be present for bitachon to be bitachon. One of them was exclusivity, right? Exclusivity. It's not your Harvard degree, it's not your company, it's not your client, it's not your amazing lawyer who crafted great contracts, right? And even in the introduction, when we talked about the benefits and he gave us the example of the alchemist, we already see a lot of the concept that he's addressing right now. So chapter 4, page 142 in the Felig edition, those of you who want to follow inside. Among those who seek wealth, there are those who obtain all their desires through one of the various means of obtaining a livelihood that we mentioned above, while there are others who obtain their desires through an inheritance or the like. Meaning to say, there's people who get their, they get their livelihood through work, a certain type of work. And by the way, in chapter 3, he even told us, when he was talking about effort in factor number 5, he told us exactly how to go about putting effort, because if he's telling us you have to be putting effort in the world, let me tell you, how do you find an area in the world in which you can focus on and obtain your livelihood? And he told us that you have to find work in an area where you have a natural tendency and a talent for it and a tolerance for it. And it's a very beautiful part of the chapter. Okay, so there's going to be people who are going to get money through that means, that vessel that they've crafted based on those 3 conditions. And there's also going to be people who are going to get it through a windfall, an inheritance, an insurance policy, who knows, okay? That person thinks that it is the means of livelihood or the inheritance, right? The business they built, the career they built, or the windfall that made him wealthy. And without them, he would not have obtained any money at all, right? That's a very common thing. If I didn't have this degree, this business, this wealthy uncle, whatever, I wouldn't have the money. And that's a mistake that he's warning us against. He praises the means and not the cause, God. Okay. So it is God who causes the means of livelihood to be available to the person, and he is the one who causes the person to be successful when engaging in those means, right? You could have the greatest degree, you could have the greatest career, and a person could have another person could have the exact same thing, hired by the same company, but have the same degree, or whatever it is, right? Start a business in the same industry, and one's going to be successful and the other one's not going to be successful. That's not a great word, but again, it's a misnomer, right? Because for a Yid, the measure of success is not how much money is in your bank account, is how much are you doing to serve Hashem in this world. But they find, let's say, financial remuneration, and the other one doesn't. So how do you explain it? Because it's irrelevant the means are irrelevant. The means are irrelevant. God is the one who's sending it. He's going to send it to whom he wants, whenever he wants, through whatever means he wants, okay? So the author will now illustrate the folly of a person who places importance on his means, thinking that excessive toil or the use of unethical means will help him earn a living, when in truth, he would have earned exactly what he was supposed to in an easier manner. So let's read it inside. This man is similar to a person traveling in the desert who becomes dehydrated and finds bitter water in a well, and he greatly rejoices at finding the water and quenches his thirst with it. However, as he journeys a little bit further, he finds a spring that is flowing with sweet water. He's distressed that he previously drank the bitter water and quenched his thirst with it. Meaning to say, this person who thinks that it was the means who gave him his sustenance is like the foolish person who takes the bitter water when he could have waited and he would have had clean water. So this person thinks is the means, and he goes on and behaves obsessively through this means, like by overworking, by cutting corners, by doing things like sacrificing his relationships, all sorts of things that turn out to be really, really negative for him, because he's giving all this value and worth to this means, put at the expense of everything healthy and good and kosher in their life. And so he's like the guy who drank the bitter water. Had he had the proper perspective, he would have known he's going to have the same amount of money. He's going to have the same, and it's going to be completely clean and completely healthy. He's not going to have to go to the therapist. He's not going to have a divorce. He's not going to be audited by the IRS. He's not going to be sued. Like, none of that. He didn't have to put all of that at risk, right? He could have pursued the means of the livelihood in a clean way, having a healthy household, a healthy marriage, coming to his home for dinner, doing everything kosher in his business, paying his taxes, doing everything he needed to do, and he would have made the same amount of money, right? He would have drank the clean water. Instead, he drank the bitter water. If someone he trusts had told him that he would later find sweet water, he would certainly not have put himself through the pain of drinking the bitter water. Similarly, the wealthy person whose wealth reached him through a particular means that involved much toil, where he too have stopped himself from engaging in that particular means, he would have managed to obtain his wealth through different, easier means, as explained earlier, because he already told us in chapter 3, how do you choose a means for a livelihood? You don't have to put everything on the line, because if it's not the means that are giving you the money, then why are you putting everything else on the line? God gave you a whole, multifaceted way to live. You have to take care of your body. You have to go exercise. You have to nurture your relationships. You have to nurture your relationship with God, with your family, with your friends. There's so many areas of life. And then there's people who go all in just in this one area, right? Because they're literally giving the full strength and energy and like credit to this means, which is the business or the job or what, that thing, right? Abandoning everything else when they could have had a much smoother life by taking care of everything else at the same time, because God is sending it anyway. So all you have to do is show up and do what you need to do based on these three conditions that he gave us in chapter 4. As long as you're choosing something that aligns with your nature, your talents, and your tolerance, you're good to go. Okay, so the difficult work that he engaged in to obtain his wealth is the equivalent of the bitter waters in the parable. Were he to have realized that he could become wealthy through a different, easier means of obtaining wealth, the sweet water in the parable, he would have never engaged in all that hard work. The author continues by quoting a verse that supports this idea. As it says, "For with the Lord there is no limitation to save with many or with few." I'm just saying, God has no limits. He's going to send you no matter what. He does. It's not like, oh, well, he takes care of billions of people, therefore let me just take care of myself and really, 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 really work very, very hard to get my sustenance, because he can't possibly take care of me and everybody else. No, it makes no difference to him. It's the same thing to him. He's taking care of everything in his creation, right? Since it is God who is the true source of his success, of the person's success, there is no reason for him to specifically choose a difficult occupation, thinking that it will cause him to be more successful. God, who is unlimited, can provide a person with wealth through an easier avenue as well. Okay, reflections on financial struggles. Having up until now elaborated on the various mistakes that people are prone to make when obtaining their livelihood, the author now continues by teaching what the correct approach should be when the person who has bitachon finds himself either without livelihood or with very limited livelihood. So up until this point, he's talked to the person who God is blessing them with financial means, with resources. What needs to be his proper attitude? How does he relate to the money? And gives us an extensive amount of material just on that. Now he's going to address, because again, we're talking about how to apply bitachon just to the area of my money and my stuff, right? So you have two options. Either you have money, and then how does bitachon apply? Well, you can't become arrogant. You can't become tethered to the means. You can become a gangster, meaning doing illegal things. You can't hoard. All these things. Okay, and now he's going to say, okay, what about how does bitachon apply when a person doesn't have, sorry, or it's limited, it's constricted for a period of time. And what he does is he gives us he gives this person a mental reframe. He's going to give us a reflection that the person, it's really a mindset. It's a mindset exercise. How does the person have to reframe this situation? The person with bitachon. Again, this is all about how do I apply bitachon in all these areas of my life and within the area of my money and my stuff, the two particular circumstances, having it or not having it. Okay, so the proper thing for a person who trusts in God to do during the days in which his livelihood is withheld from him is to say to himself, and before I tell you the first reflection or meditation, just notice, I said it last time in the Spanish class, to do during the days, meaning to say, and this is an important thing that people need to remember, that sometimes these things are very often temporary. It's not because a person is in a limited financial situation. It doesn't mean that's it. Like that's doomed. Like that's written from beginning to end of our life. No, there's always going to be ups and downs. And so now, as he's addressing it, this is a situation. These are some days that's going to happen. What is he going to do those days? But I wanted to highlight that because sometimes we overlook it. And very often there's a tendency to think, this is how it is. That I'm always going to be stuck. The money's always going to be tied. Da, 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 da. No, absolutely not. For a person with bitachon, like this is not, it's obvious not. Why? Because God is infinite. God is all those 7 qualities we said before. And he's the one who's sending the money. So he can send it at any given time. But let's say you're in a day where it's not coming, or it's coming dripping and not pouring. What does a person with bitachon say, right? How does he think? So he says the following to himself. And again, this is not something that we go tell somebody else. This is something that we tell ourselves. He who brought me out of the womb into this world at a specific time and specific moment, and who did not bring me into the world before that time or afterwards, he is the one who is withholding my sustenance from me until a specific time and a specific day in accordance with what he knows to be best for me. So again, it's temporary. He's withholding it until a certain time, and then it's going to flow again, right? So the mental reframe is, the same creator who created me, who brought me into this world at a specific time, right? And he didn't do it at another time. He's the one who now chose that it's the time to withhold it. And he's the same one who is going to choose a time when he's going to give it again to me. And it's all because that's when it's good for me. He knew when it was good for me to come into this world. And he knows when it's good for me to take it, and when it's going to be good for me to give it back. Similarly, when his sustenance comes to him but is limited, and he receives no more than what he needs for his food, it is proper to think to himself and say, he who prepared my food for me in the bosom of my mother when I was born, according to my needs and enough to sustain me each and every day until he exchanged it for better food, and the fact that the milk was limited did not harm me whatsoever, so too this limited sustenance, which is according to my needs, to which God has currently brought me to, will not harm me whatsoever, even if it continues this way until the end of my life. Even if Hashem only continues to sustain me with a little bread and water and a few vegetables, it's not going to harm me, because the same way that he gave me mother's milk at the beginning of my existence, and then he switched it to other food, right? And the fact that the milk was limited, and the fact that the supply of milk reduced at some point when I learned to eat other food didn't hurt me. The milk never harmed me. None of that, right? The same creator now is giving me whatever little food I have, right? Because this is the example of he has just what he needs, right? Doesn't have extra. He's not eating steak, right? His mental reframe is, it's not going to harm me. It's not going to do anything. It must be exactly what I need. A person who relies on God despite his minimal livelihood will be rewarded for doing so, as the Creator said regarding our forefathers in the desert, whose situation was similar to this person, as evident from the verse, and the people shall go out and gather what is needed for the day. That's the best example, right? God gave a limited amount of manna. It wasn't like you could stock up and have reserves for later, for retirement. Like we have the luxury of saving for retirement now. And like, no. You got food for the day. There's no freezer in the garage with piles of chicken and meat because it went on sale and you were able to stock up. You're not stocking it up any man. If you tried to stock up even a little ounce, it was rotten, right? The lesson is God gives me exactly what I need. I don't need to look beyond today. I need to know that just like it came today, tomorrow it will come, right? It's a very, very powerful lesson. And that's a very powerful mental reframe for the person who's experiencing that situation. Today, I have what I need. Yeah, actually, I have air, I have water, I have clothing, I have shelter, I have some food. Yeah, then you're okay. No, but I don't know how I'm going to pay tomorrow, the bill, the this, but that's tomorrow. Today, you're absolutely safe and fine, right? And it's such a trick because we're always looking forward, right? No. But the exercise in bitachon is, but right now, I am actually, and this is a lot of the meditations, right? Malka and Sharon that we did. I felt a little bit like some of the meditations that Tamar did in the retreat last week took, at least for me, took me to that place of, but right now I'm safe, especially that Friday night meditation, right? I'm here. Everything is taken care of. There's nothing that I'm lacking at this very moment. Okay. The Israelites followed God into the desert, where they were sustained with a minimal daily allotment of man and were rewarded for this trust. As it says, go and call out in the ears of Jerusalem, saying, so says the Lord, I remember regarding you the loving kindness of your youth, the love of your nuptials, your following me in the desert in a land not sown. Because the Jews just went. They went into this crazy adventure. They don't know where they're going. They're going into this desert because they went on a promise and a promise from God. And God really, it says here in the Navi, it shows that God really felt that love that of the Jewish people for going all in on bitachon and going into that experience, okay? The author now turns to discuss a person who receives his livelihood in an unpleasant manner. Meaning to say, let's say this person is getting some livelihood, and whatever he's getting is not coming through the way that he would like. For example, he doesn't love his job, or it's coming through his spouse, instead of through him or through her, or it's coming from an in-law, or it's coming from an uncle, or it's coming from a person he doesn't like, whatever it is, or a client that he really doesn't want to work with, right? It's not coming in the way, it's not that it's not kosher. It's completely kosher. It's just not the way he would prefer it, right? Just like we have a preference into, hello, God, send more. And by the way, we can continue to ask for more. This bitachon doesn't preclude, having that conversation. If it's a relationship, then obviously I'm going to have a conversation with my creator 3 times a day. I'm going to tell him what my needs are. And just as I'm happy with this moment, I can tell him the next moment, you feel free to change it because you can do anything, right? The same way, this person is just not completely like, I don't like the way it's coming. What is the mental reframe? So it goes like this. Similarly, if his sustenance comes through a means that he did not want, or from a place that he did not want, or if he received his livelihood from a person he did not want to receive it from, he should say to himself, he who fashioned me with a particular form and shape, with certain character traits and dimensions, and did so because this is what is best for me, he is the one who chose for me that my sustenance should come about in ways that are most suitable for my purposes and not in any other ways that are not in my best interest. So we notice the pattern. This person always understands that whatever God is giving him at every single moment must be custom made, couture, right? It's custom made. It's the highest couture there is. It's by design, right? It must be good for me. It must be good for me. Do I know? Do I understand? I don't understand. I might not prefer it, but I have equanimity and tranquility and peace of mind, right? It's a state of equanimity because I know I'm being supported by the one who supports that, by the one who's the only one who supports. And therefore, if he's supporting me, like the newborn baby, if the mommy's taking him in the stroller, in the whatever, in her arms to the doctor's office or to the supermarket, whatever he's going, he might prefer to be at home, right? But he's chilled because he's with his mother. I don't know, like he's just going with the flow. So this person's just going with the flow, right? He understands that this is the way it is because, again, he has a solid track record. He has all these 7 trustworthy qualities, among them the track record, etc. The author continues by addressing what a person should say to himself if he is unhappy about the place or person through which he receives his sustenance. So, second reflection. He who brought me out of my mother's womb into this world in a specific place and through 2 particular parents, and not through any other people in the world, he is the one who chose for me that my sustenance should come in a certain land and through a certain person. He chose that person or place to be the means of my livelihood for my good, as the verse states, the Lord is righteous in all his ways. Okay. Now we're moving on to category number 3. How does bitachon apply to category number 3, which is going to be my family, friends, and enemies, my circle of influence, my interpersonal relationships. And here he's going to give us 2 possibilities. There's going to be scenario number 1, which is you don't have so many personal relationships. You don't have people in your life, God forbid, right? How does a person apply bitachon in that situation? What is the mental reframe? What is the bal bitachon if he is in that situation? How does he behave? How does he think? And then there's a situation of the person who is blessed with a lot of people around him, with a lot of people he has to interact with and take care of and have a relationship with, whether it be a spouse, whether it be cousins, whether it be brothers, sisters, parents, in-laws, employees, bosses, customers, community members, people who don't get along, or etc. Okay, so let's start with the first scenario, which is going to be when we don't have it. Okay. So how the author now turns to discuss how a person is supposed to have bitachon regarding matters in the 3rd category, matters which affect a person's social interactions. However, the explanation regarding the proper bitachon in the 3rd category, which is comprised of those matters that pertain to his wife, children, members of his household, relatives, friends, enemies, people whom he holds in high esteem, acquaintances, as well as superiors and subordinates from different classes of people, the proper way to rely on God regarding them is as I will relate. A person cannot escape from one of the following 2 scenarios. Either he will be estranged, living alone, or 2, he will live amongst his family and close ones. If he is estranged, living alone, then he should connect with God at the time of his loneliness. Again, the bal bitachon is completely cemented to God, okay? Regardless of his situation. If he's lonely, he's still going to be cemented to God. And he should rely on God in the state of estrangement. In order to comfort himself, he should dwell on the fact that the soul is also estranged in this world, and that all the people of the world are considered as quote-unquote strangers in it. As the verse says, for you are strangers and temporary residents with me, right? The soul is here. The soul is down here. It says against its will, it came down to this world. And it also says that against its will, it's going to leave, right? Because then it actually was able to do mitzvot here. And then the soul knows that once it leaves, it cannot do anything of that. So at the beginning, the soul is against its will, it came. Against its will, it's also going to leave. But it's a stranger. The soul is a stranger in this world. It's like this is not a world of souls, it's a world of bodies, right? So it feels very, very estranged here, right? So it's also a very temporary passage, a very temporary journey. Furthermore, he should comfort himself in the following manner. He should think to himself that even all those people who have close ones in this world will, in a short amount of time, revert to being strangers and alone. And neither a person's close one nor his child will be able to help him then, nor will they be able to connect with him. So all of us are transitory here. And at some point, in a certain way, we're also all alone in this world. Eventually, everybody leaves. If a person lives a long time, then what happens is he will outlive his family members and find himself alone. Alternatively, he could leave this world first. Any advantages that a person gains from having family who can help him and provide solace are only temporary, right? So that's kind of like the reframe, the words of comfort, right? After this, he should think about the fact that due to his living alone, the weight of those people's loads, the people who have people in their life, the weight of their loads, their responsibilities and needs has been removed from him. So, there could be a positive aspect here. I don't have all those responsibilities that come with having relationships and people in my life. He should consider this removal, the removal of the responsibilities, to be one of the kindnesses of the Creator to him. For if he is a person who pursues worldly matters and its needs, his work will be much less of a strain on him if he does not have a wife and children. So if he's involved in the world, he doesn't have the pressure that he has to feed and sustain other family members. It emerges that the lack of wife and children is the cause of his rest and for his own good. If he is a person who seeks the matters of the world to come, so say this person is just totally consumed with Torah study, let's say he's just involved only in spiritual matters, then his mind will, without a doubt, be more unoccupied and free to pursue these matters when he's alone than if he had a family with which he busied himself, right? He doesn't have to come home and bathe the kids, and he doesn't have to help with supper, and he can just go learn Torah 24/7 pretty much and get a few hours of sleep. He doesn't have to be early in the morning to help his wife with the kids, etc., whatever it is, okay? So he has to think that there's a benefit to not having all these responsibilities. You can concentrate on your studies. You don't have the pressure to have to sustain other people. And he says here, this is why the ascetics would flee from their relatives and houses to the mountains so that they could free their minds to focus on the service of God. Similarly, the prophets at the time of prophecy would leave their places of residence and seclude themselves so they could free their minds to ponder fulfilling the obligations imposed on them by the Creator. So he's giving this individual this example to understand that there's such a concept, and there's people who, in order to have prophecy, they would leave their families, right? That came with the prophecy. Or there's people who were ascetics at some point, and that's how they would become more spiritual, by detaching themselves from the burden and the responsibility of being involved in the world with people in the world. So he's going to give us a few examples, and he's going to give us a whole little story about an ascetic. And I want to preface before we get into it that obviously this is all going to sound a little bit strange, and that is normal. And the reason is because we don't practice asceticism in today's day and age. Like, that is a practice that is long gone, 500 plus years ago. It's finita, okay? We don't do this anymore. It is the closer we are to the days of Mashiach, the more we are serving Hashem with involvement in the world, and the need to try to physically remove ourselves from the world became obsolete. That doesn't happen. Not that it ever was something that was necessarily mainstream Judaism, but I'm saying there was a place and a time for that for certain individuals. It's not anymore. It's not anymore. Nobody's going now and having to fast, the whole week and eat minimal amounts of bread and water and eat and sleep on top of nails and not get clothing and laundered and whatever. That asceticism is not a way of divine service as we speak. But we're talking about a book that's written 1,000 years ago, right? Where asceticism, I'm not saying everybody was an ascetic, but we could find that form of divine service with very highly sophisticated, spiritually devout individuals, right? We don't find it today, and that's okay. That's actually a good thing, okay? So just to put in context so that nobody should freak out, if it sounds a little strange, it's because to us it's very unfamiliar, but there was a time and a place for that. And so he's going to give us an example like that. Okay, so before that, he's going to give us an example of Elisha, when Elijah the prophet, and here we go. An example of this is Elisha, when Elijah came to anoint him as his successor, because now he's giving us the example of prophecy. As you know from the story of Elijah and Elisha, about whom the verse states, 12 yokes were before him, and he was with the 12th. The verse continues that Elijah threw his cloak over Elisha as a hint that Elisha too would wear the special cloak that only prophets would wear. So since Elijah subtly hinted to him that he would be a prophet, Elisha understood him and said, please allow me to kiss my father and my mother, and I will go after you. And the following verse states, and he followed Elijah and ministered to him. So as soon as Elisha realized that he was about to become a prophet, he took leave of his family, because that's just kind of like how removing himself from those relationships was going to allow him to have that elevated level of, service and connection to his creator. Now, the story is told of an ascetic. Here's the funny, weird, funny story. It's both. The story is told of an ascetic who went to a certain country to teach its inhabitants about the correct way to serve God. Again, this is not something we do today, okay? He found that they were all wearing the same colored clothing and ornaments. Their gravesites were next to the doors of their homes, and he did not see any women among them. So it was kind of weird. So he asked them about these weird practices. So when he asked them, the ascetics, about this, they replied, the reason why we all wear the same colored clothing? So that it should not be distinguishable between the poor and the rich, and so that the rich will not end up arrogant and boastful about his wealth, and so that the poor will not despise himself, and he should think of his life on this earth in the same manner as when he will be underneath it after his passing. It is said about one of the kings that he would mingle among his servants and could not be identified among them, because he conducted himself humbly in regard to the clothes and ornaments that he wore. So meaning to say that is like that's what they did. That was their reasoning for these ascetics. Okay, they were acting like this king that was very humble. He didn't stand out, and you could not recognize because he wore the same clothes. So it was a way that everybody should seem equal. Nobody should feel superior to other. Everybody should understand that we're all came and we're all leaving in the same way, regardless of what we have. Now, the second thing that this man observed about the ascetics are going to answer him about, and that is, why did they place their grave sites by their door? As to the reason why we placed our grave sites next to the doors of our houses, it is in order that we should take rebuke from it by being ready for death, and to prepare for ourselves the provisions that will bring us to the place of rest. So having the grave sites in constant sight served as a reminder of death and how they must prepare themselves for the world to come by Torah learning and observance. So it's kind of like it gives us perspective. We're in a temporary world, right? We're not going to get distracted by the distractions of this world. We understand where we're going, and really we're working towards actually having a better world to come, if we stay focused. I guess that's like it was like a visual to stay focused and where they were headed. Okay. So then what about there were no women around them? That which you notice that we separated ourselves from our wives and children, you should know that we designated a city for them nearby. When one of us needs something from them, he goes to them and takes care of his needs, and then he returns to us. We did this because we saw the stress, the much loss, great exertion, and toil that would come to us as a result of being in proximity to them, and the relief from all of this due to our distance from them, enabling us to be free to choose to engage in matters of the world to come and to detest the matters of this world. Again, we don't live in a world where we're detesting the matters of this world. Just want to stress again, this ascetics existed at this time 1,000 years old. That's why the example is relevant for the text. But it's for us, it's a little bit just gives us a glimpse to understand, again, in the context of what he's telling the individual who doesn't have people in their life. They need to understand that the burden of having people in their life and the ability that he could focus more on his spiritual growth and other things could be a benefit. I mean, it has to be a benefit for him. Otherwise, God is not giving it to them, right? So it's putting that that reasoning into perspective. Their words found favor in the eyes of the ascetic who had visited them, and he blessed and praised them for their practices. So although it is, of course, unfortunate not to have a family, a person should comfort himself with the fact that from a certain perspective, he has it easier, both in the material and the spiritual. Okay, now he's going to discuss how a person who has family and social network, etc., should have bitachon. I'm going to start it, but we're not going to get very far, but I'll start it for the next 5 minutes. So the person has people in their lives. How does bitachon apply? If the person trusting in God has a wife, family members, friends, and enemies, then he should rely on God to save him from the burden usually associated with being involved with them. And he should make efforts to meet his obligations towards them and to take care of their wants and to do so wholeheartedly, right? If I'm in it, I'm all in it, right? If this is what God gave me, I'm not fetching about it. This is what I have. I have a husband, I have a business, I have employees. Whatever it is that I have, this is what I have to take care of. I don't have to worry. The Baal Bitachon doesn't worry. I have to do. I have to prepare. I have to plan. I have to be involved, right? Because that's what God has given me. He should avoid doing anything that will cause them harm. Instead, he should engage in the means that will bring them good. And he should be loyal to them regarding all their matters. He should teach them the appropriate way to conduct themselves, both in Torah matters and in worldly matters, which will benefit them in their service of the Creator. So again, if God gives me these people in my life, is so that I could be a good influence. I am there to be involved in their lives and to behave towards them in a good way and to be a good influence in their lives, right? As it is written, you shall love your fellow as yourself. And as it says in the preceding verse, you should not hate your brother in your heart. He should not do so with the hope that, meaning he should not teach them with the hope that his favors will be repaid to him, nor to repay them for the good that they already did to him. None of that. Again, the Baal Bitachon has very healthy relationships. He's not doing anything to get anything out of anyone, and he's not doing anything to receive veneration from anyone, not to extract benefit from anyone, and not to gain, like, not to be feed his ego. It's not self-serving. It's the whole, everything in his life is God-centered, not self-centered. Okay, so this is the approach. The approach is I have to be involved in these people's lives, right? I have to do it in the best way possible. I have to teach them, to serve their Creator. I have to make a Kiddush Hashem constantly. It goes without saying, but he's not doing it expecting people to, what's it called? To repay him for doing that. Or what was the other one? He should not do so with the hope that his favors will be repaid to him, nor to repay them. Oh, so he's also not doing them as a payment for good that the people in his life did for him. Okay, it should not be done out of love for the honor and praise that they will give him, nor in order to rule over them. Rather, it should be done to fulfill the mitzvah of the Creator, to observe his covenant and his instructions concerning them. For a person who performs their request while having in mind one of the aforementioned selfish reasons will not achieve his own desires that he expected from them in this world. He will have toiled for nothing, and he will lose his reward in the world to come, because as he told us many, many times, nobody else can do anything for you. So if you have the attitude of I'm doing this to this with this person or for this person in order to gain something from them, you're absolutely out of alignment and out of whack. And you should know that person has no power to give you anything. So you're relying on something very, very fickle. Okay. So a person who has these ulterior motives will not receive what he was expecting. It will emerge that he worked hard for no reason and that he won't even be rewarded for his charitable deeds in the world to come. So he lost on both counts. He lost in this count because he thinks he's going to gain something in this world from this person. And now, not only that, because because God knows exactly what your intentions were, you also lose merit in the world to come. So on a spiritual level, you also lost. Okay, so however, if his conduct in the above is solely for the sake of divine service, so if his conduct with all the people around him is because he's serving Hashem and that's it, then God will help them repay him in this world. So yes, he will gain benefit from having done good for other people in this world, and God will place in their mouths the person's praise. He also will get praise, and God will make him great in their eyes. So all the things that you weren't looking for, you're actually going to get. Meanwhile, the guy who's looking for all of that is not going to get it. Additionally, he will also arrive at his great reward in the world to come, as God said to King Solomon, and I have also given you that which you have not asked, both riches and honor. So when King Solomon was first crowned, he offered a prayer to God, asking for an understanding heart with which to rule over the people. God responded by telling him that since he did not ask for long life, wealth, honor, or the like, he would be rewarded with wealth and honor as well. This verse is cited as proof that when a person does good with the motive of gaining materially, God doesn't fulfill his wishes. However, when he does so with the right motives, that is serving God, God will reward him with material good as well. Okay, so now we're going to leave it here. And then he's going to tell us what about people in your life that are either of a subordinate nature or of a superior nature. So let's say you have bosses or people above you or people who are below you. How does the Baal Bitachon, the master of Bitachon, relate to these individuals with Bitachon? What is the proper approach to each of these kind of scenarios and when it comes to relationships? Any stories, any comments?